Hello everyone, my name is Milan Mikuš and I would like to tell you about some features in DotVVM that will make your application faster. DotVVM has lots and lots of features, but some of them are more suited towards data-heavy applications than others. Those features I'm going to show you. Maybe you've written something in DotVVM and tried what we call like the old way or the classical way how to write web pages in DotVVM. And I would like to show you today something a little bit different, and I wonder whether or not you might or might not use some of these features in your project. First up is import directive. You might have already used it. It's used, for example, if you want to include resources in your page. Let's see code for this demo. And in here you can see very simple page. You have view model and you have some text resources that are generated as a class, and the resource texts are of course members of that class. And those are some simple texts pondering about maybe proportions of main wolves. So first off, there are 3 ways to get some texts into your web page. First is you reference the text with the full path. This is full path, namespace, type and everything, then the property containing the text. But to make your life easier, there is a feature called import directive, and the import directive lets you import the namespace so that you might use the type like this. The type is text, and you might use it now because it has been imported already here. Another way to do it is you can use type aliases. This works nearly exactly as using what in C#. You type alias your text as T, and then instead of writing it out fully, you can just use T dot property whatever. As you can see in the demo, this one is fairly simple, it works. It's lyrics from meme song pondering about maybe the proportions of main wolves aren't as you would expect. So we have imports, and that set us up for another cool feature that's called static command binding. Static command binding is not very new to DotVVM, but since like DotVVM, I think 2.0, before it was used as a nuanced thing just to hide some dialogue or whatever, but now it should be a very powerful tool that will allow you to make faster applications. Let's see the code. The code is here. Static command binding first demo. First demo is just a really simple use case that most of people use static command for. You have some property in your view model, and the property is being toggled to switch something on and off. Here you can see the section uses visible attribute, and when this evaluates as true, the section is visible, otherwise it's false. In the demo, we go to static command section, and here is the toggle button. We toggle it, and as you can see, really the proportions of main wolves are really kind of... This is probably the most used use case for static command binding, but there is much more you can do. One of those things is, for example, you couple the imported type, and you can use this imported type to call methods on it. The method has to have, when we go to code, the method, I use F12 for that. You can see there is some very simple logic that will give you random cute image of seal depending on random seed. The important part here is that you have this allowed static command attribute on your function that you want to call. This is just static function. So we will take a look at usage now. And usage is like this. You go property equals, and you call the function from the server, and the server when it's evaluated the function returns the result and saves it into seal URL property in your view model. Then we make the image visible once the seal property has been set, and we bind the seal property to the source of the image. And what's important to note here, this is all happening on the client side. The client side expect this little piece of code that is evaluated on the server, then returns the result, but the property is set purely on client side. The visibility of image is decided on client side, and also the source is exchanged on client side. So, to the demo, I will show you also the diagnostic page for this. You go give me seal, and in a network tab we can see there is a response from the static command, and and first we go to parameters tab. Yeah, to explain this. This is a network section of debug console for this page, and under network you can see all the calls that DotVVM makes to make your page work. And I just now selected one of the calls that happened when I clicked on the seal. When I click give me seal, you can see that new rows were added to the client section, to the network section, and so those are the network calls. One is the image itself, and the one is the call to the static command. It's this call over here, this call that is evaluated on server side. So when we click this, we can see in parameters what has been set to server. And as you can see, what we set is very minimal. It's a cross-site forgery token, and then there is some command ID, but other than that, we are not sending anything else. We are not sending view model, nothing, just parameters for the function. And we can see here the function has no parameters, so this args array is empty because there were no parameters to this function. And response, in a response we can see the data that came back from the server, and as you can see, it's the URL for the picture we are seeing right now. And here the picture has been loaded when client side exchanged the old URL for the new one. Compare this to give me seal the lame way, the old way. The lame way is we are doing full postback to the client side. We have to serialize our view model. The view model we are going to serialize is over here. Let me just go F12 on this, and here we are seeing the view model. Here is the properties we've been using so far. This is the toggle volt property, seal URL property that we've been looking at just now on the client side. This is the server side. When we do full postback, when we use the classical command binding, not the static command binding, we will have to serialize all this, send it to server, and the server will send us back some differences that happened in this view model, and then the client patches it all together and displays a result. Let's see now. We go back to the web page, to the client side, and we go give me the seal the lame way. So just reminder, the lame way uses full command over here. This is the difference. This is static command, and the other one is just ordinary command that most people would use. Like, this is the old way, and this is what's been with DotVVM from the start. It's what I am showing you here is where we can save data and make the application a little bit faster, a little bit leaner, as I would say. So let's get to it. We go give me seal, and now we can see another postback from our page, and the postback looks like this. First we go to parameters, and we are looking at what's been sent in a payload as a request to our server, and we can see already that that it's grown quite a bit. Like, we are sending all this stuff, resources, paths, we are sending whole view model, like everything in there. So, and the response is not that big, but it's thanks to this view model div, because first it calculates only the property, it calculates and sends back only properties that changed. So that saves some data for you, but the real pain point is that this whole view model is serialized and sent in the request whenever classical command is performed. Those are the differences. I just told you difference between command and static command. Static command, as we can see here, only sends absolutely necessary data for the one single function that gets evaluated on the server, while the classical command sends whole view model, then evaluates it, then sends a little bit more data back. Let's see something different you can go do with static command. This was fairly simple. We just called one server-side function. And this is another example I would like to show you here, is how you can profit from evaluating stuff on client side instead of server side. We can have simple calculator here. It's like what it does is, imagine you have some beam and you have to cut it into multiple pieces, and so like you know how long the one piece is, and you are wondering how many pieces you can get from this. So you have to first divide these two numbers, and then you round down the number of pieces, because like you cannot have like 4.5 pieces, and that doesn't make sense for your use case, let's say here. So we can write our length here of the whole beam. Then we have length of the one piece of the beam, and we can see here, as soon as we stop typing, it updated with 13 pieces we can cut from this large beam. How it's done on the servers, on the markup side, is like, I have static command binding. Maybe you got used to already to this static command stuff. So yeah, I have this one property pieces, and I set it again from the server, from the demo object that I have statically imported. This is like just a type. I'm calling again static function here. Let me go F12. This is like static command function that only thing it does is it floors the number I am giving to it. It's just for demo purposes. Like you would be better off in real use case to do it just in the JavaScript, but let's say we need to perform some more difficult operation here, so this would make sense. So first thing we have to have a look at here is like this expression here. When the text box changes, we want to recalculate the number of pieces. So what we do is, first we divide the whole beam with the length of one piece, and so when we do this, we can pass it to the round down function that gets called to the server. What I would like to show you here is how evaluating of static command works. So let's say you have this function and you need to pass it some parameters, and what happens is, first the parameters get evaluated, and then after it has been evaluated on the client, the parameter part, it's this part over here, it gets sent to the client, to this function, and as I have shown you before, the result is returned and set to property pieces. So let's have a look how it looks in the inspect window, and we inspect this part over here, inspect element, for example. So we scope to this part of the page, and again we will have a look at network. Let me just clean it real quick for a new demo. Here we go. And what we do here is I change something. For example, I can make this like free, and I click away so it gets evaluated. And now what the call is. Have a look at these parameters over here. We can have a look what gets passed to the function. These parameters get passed to the function I have just shown you as before. This is the round down function. The argument is evaluated already. The division has been done. Now it's sent to the server, and now again we can look at the response, and the response is just a single number. You can have a look at this whole page. There are many things here, but nothing else gets updated, just this one single number returned from the server. The important thing here that I just showed you is that parameters gets evaluated first, and then the call on the server is performed. So another demo. This demo is meant to show you another feature that many people don't know, or I made actually little questionnaire about people I know that use DotVVM. There are really not that many people that use this feature, and I will show you just now. This feature is called blocks in commands. It's block operator. Sometimes you would like to perform some action and then perform something else along with that. For example, let's say you got saving to the database and you do the call, and then you would like to show some window or alert or anything like that saying the changes has been saved, or maybe you would like to update the list or do something like that. And that's why we introduced rather this new operator that's like suspiciously similar to semicolon. And it's really not to say that we should write like 20,000 semicolon separated lines into one binding. That would be terrible. Everybody on the earth would suffer because of that. Here on the first button we have the snail call. The snail call is very useful call that does nothing else than make people uncomfortable by taking very, very long time. Like maybe if you have legacy systems, you have some calls like that. But this one is purposely set up so that, that you will wait 4 seconds until something happens. And then we would like to say it's finished. Let's try it out on the demo. I will just do start, and we will do 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's finished, it's done. What happened here is this call was taking very long time, and so this other property haven't updated until the first call had completed already. This is maybe a little bit counterintuitive, but due to limitation, due to certain limitation, like I can tell you which limitation it is. Like first and foremost, we want to keep view model consistent, and then therefore, when we do update operations on the view model, we want to update everything at once in one command. So we want to avoid situation where command is running, updates some properties, another command is running, reads that properties, updates something else. That would be a real mess and source of numerous race conditions. We do not want that. So therefore, static command was set up in a way that static command as a whole, like every block of static command binding that has blocks, finishes at once, whole command finishes at once, and it takes as long as the longest running block in the command. So for example, we have snail command block here, and then we have this command that just updates some property. This takes really short time, this takes very long time, but the updating of the view model does not happen until this the longest running operation has completed. The longest running operation in this binding is this. Binding won't update view model until it's all finished. If there was like 3 commands or 4 commands, the binding would evaluate only after all those commands have finished. So therefore, I want to bring your attention to this other line because I have seen some people make a mistake of thinking I made this mistake actually myself when this feature was first introduced. I wanted to go like, okay, so these are like statements. So I will first update some property here. I will tell user the operation has started. Then there will be the long-running operation here, and after it is finished, the user will see it's finished, it's done, right? So no, wrong, because as I've said before, the binding only updates view model after all calls have been completed. So until this call is finished, this and this won't happen, and after it has finished, these 2 properties will update on the same time, and the last in chain, which is this one, will take precedence. Let's try this button, start, not what you think, it's called this because the command is set up in a way that would lead you into thinking it will first write start and then it will write finish after 4 seconds, but this is not the case. It will finish in 4 seconds and then try to write the view model all at once. As I was saying, this is the start, not what you think button, and let's try it now. And as you can see, we wait 4 seconds and it only updates view model after the operation has finished and the last one in the block takes precedence. Therefore, I would like you to think about the block binding not as like not to fall into pitfall of thinking this is like statements. Those are not statements. This is just operator that separates operations that run asynchronously independent of each other, with the exception of updating view model that happens in the end. So, but there is one strange thing I would like to show you, or not strange, rather it's unintended use of the system, because as I said before in the demo with the calculator, arguments are evaluated first, and only then the calls on the server are evaluated. So let's see this binding. What happens here? Let's have a closer look. And so we have this command binding on the click, and so we have in the parameter of the function, which is like generic function of t, so it takes any argument, and here the parameter is evaluated first, this assignment expression actually returns value of string, so that's cool. And then we have the long-running operation as before, and then we have the updating of viewModel. It's finished. So I will let you take a guess what happens now. You should have guessed by now, by what we have been talking about till now, that what happens here is like this expression will get evaluated, so the viewModel is set to start it, the snail text, and then the commands get evaluated, and then this block containing assignment gets evaluated in the end because it's setting the viewModel, so it replaces the text with it's finished, it's done. Over here we can try this. It updated with started, then the 4 seconds, and then it's finished, it's done. Yeah. So the parameters function is like really just for fun. What I did just for fun. It's like this very, very simple helper function that takes any parameter whatsoever. So we can do this kind of feature here. This is like, I do not really want people to use this in production code. It would be terrible for anyone who doesn't understand, who doesn't like really spend very much time digging into DotVVM fundamentals. But this is just to make you really think about what's happening in the pipeline of evaluating static command bindings. Like, if we want to achieve this behavior, I would really suggest, rather than doing this, have a look at, for example, postback handlers, and this is much cleaner way to do it. It's all around better because you rarely just want to set something, you usually want to do some logic about, so postback handler is much safer place to do it. But what I would like you to take from this is that there is a way to run multiple requests to the server or multiple operation in one binding, and the whole binding takes as long as the longest running operation in the binding, and only after the operation had completed, the viewModel is updated with the fresh data. Next, we have IncludeInPage versus visible. This is just a simple question. You have seen this before with the main wolf. This just uncovers some fake looking animal. Like, imagine you have unicorns and just like horses with horn, and then you have like giraffe, and the giraffe is like, it's like horse, but that looks like leopard and has this giant neck and 2 antennas on top, and like this is real. Unicorns aren't. Don't get it. But what I really wanted to say here is, these two pieces of code look really, really similar, but in terms of performance, they couldn't be much more different. Couldn't be much more different because in one binding I use visible, and for the other section in the code I use IncludeInPage. What's the difference? Looks similar, but it isn't. Visible is only just, I would say, shortcut to making something invisible, making the section invisible, and basically only thing it does, it sets style display none to the section, so it disappears from the page. Meanwhile, IncludeInPage, it really deletes the section from the DOM. It completely gets rid of it. Challenge with visible is it doesn't delete the HTML from the page. It just hides it. So you have got tons and tons of elements that really there is no use for them being there. They just take space in the DOM, and make your page slower because nobody sees them anyway. So that's why using IncludeInPage is much better. We can have a look at inspect. When I have a look at inspect, there are the two sections. First one is this section and this section with the IncludeInPage. IncludeInPage, and you can see it's translated to some knockout binding. And when I hide the pictures, there is the difference. The difference is the visible part. Only thing that happened is like you have display none over here, but the part that had IncludeInPage is completely gone. So that's about it. This was just a tiny little feature, but it can make huge impact on your web page, especially when you are using a lot of model windows, lot of details in your grids and so on. Another demo, we are going to have a look at another feature to make your experience with static commands and with fast loading .vm pages better. And this feature is called services. It's quite new. I think it's only taken shape in .vvm 2.1, or if I'm not mistaken. And this feature allows you to call services from your .vvm web page. So let's have a look at the demo with services. And here you can see the steps to use service in your .vvm page. It's add service directive, and you choose your alias. This can be literally whatever, and then you put in the type and namespace and type for the service. But the difference from import command is that this service is injected as an instance. So this is normal transient per request instance that lives in your application. Let's have a look at the service and in the code here. So F12 again, and now we can see it's different from the static helpers we've been used to so far, because it's like literally ordinary class. Ordinary class. Only difference is if we want to call members of this class like instance methods here, you see there is no static anywhere. You have to put allow static command. This will make .vvm recognize this method and perform validation that you are using only the methods that are intended to be used from JavaScript. So in here you can see simple service that loads quotes from JSON file, and then there is option to add new quote over here. The implementation isn't really that important. It just takes the text, creates new quote, saves into JSON, and this part here is just loading from JSON file. So let's have a look at view model of this service demo. F7 to go to view model here, and over here we can see we injected this service in the constructor also, and we use it here to on start of application just load the data. But the same service we can use also directly from the markup, because we injected this code service as an instance. It is a trade-off, because on one hand you don't have any state. These services cannot be used with state. Saving state in them would be unwise. Those are not view models. View models are for state. These service instances are to perform some kind of business logic. But the plus side is there are several pluses and they just continue. First, it's very lightweight. It's like one service easily injected over here, easy to use, and this service can also take dependencies in constructor. It can easily take, for example, .vvm request context if you need that. You can, in real world application, you would probably have like facades or in worst case database context or something like that. Usually I would advise against using facades directly as services and injecting facades directly into .vvm pages. I would much rather you thought of this as kind of controller setup, because it kind of behaves like MVC controller. It's an instance that handles your calls from the web page. So to set up this, we need to have a look at startup file, and in the startup file we have services that are set up. These services that are part of a Microsoft dependency injection. So we can take this service collection and extend them, but by adding transient object, transient dependency, and over here you can see we are registering two services. This one we are using right now, quote service, is registered here, and after it has been registered, we are free to edit in using service directive, choose alias for it, and then we can use it in the binding. For example, in here you can see we are using blocks, binding blocks, to first add new quote into list of quotes on the server side, and then we set the new quote to empty string so that user might know the quote has been saved and we can proceed with. Important thing to note here is because the services are stateless, we are returning here as a return type of the function the collection of quotes that has been updated with our new quote. And this may seem as it's fairly similar what we are doing in the view model with the classical approach, but over here, remember, we didn't post any quotes on the server side. Only thing that goes to server is parameter of this function call, in this case new quote, and what returns is list of those quotes. But if there were multiple lists on the same page, nothing else is returned, nothing else is serialized and deserialized again. I will show you then comparison with a way this would be usually done. First, let's try the example. Over here, we can see the example of some Elon Musk quotes. There are pretty serious one, like don't delude yourself into thinking something's not working, and so on, so on. So we will add something more cheerful in here, like I would like to die on Mars, not on impact though. And we will add this, and you can see it instantly updates. And in the network we can see the call. This is the response. First, let's take a look at arguments. Arguments is like only this text we are posting on the server, nothing else besides some 2 tokens for security reasons, and we have response is results the whole collection that needs to be replaced because it's been sorted and it's been added to. But this may seem like quite a lot of data, but let's compare it with the way it's been usually done, for example, in DotVVM 1.0. And in DotVVM 1.0, what you will see here is much more data being transferred. Let's see here. So we have another page with Elon Musk memes, this time implemented directly, and in here we can add some quotes again. But first, let's have a look at this another implementation. You see it's been implemented in traditional way when we use regular command and we use add async method code on our view model. There is no service here, no static commands, only legacy.vvm stuff. So this is the view model. This does nothing else, just to call the service and says the quotes should be refreshed. And then again, over here, the quotes are loaded. This is what you might see. Like if it's not, if it's the first time we are on this page, or the page needs refreshing, just refresh the quotes. This may seem like it's fairly similar, and there will not be that much of a performance impact, but it will actually. Let's see the page here for just a minute, the diagnostic tools. Let me clear this up. Here we go. And I will write something here, like, for example, this famous, world-famous, industry-changing millionaire quote that he said when he saw this picture was, "This really happened. Whoa, ha 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 ha." And we add that, and it's been added, and now we take a look at what's the difference. This is the request side, and before we had like nearly nothing being transferred, only the text we wanted to add. This is much different story. The legacy way of doing this will transfer whole view model. It means all of the 50 items in the quote list will be transferred to the server. Then they will be deserialized to the view model, so the quotes property might be filled, and then only after it's been refreshed, the quotes been reloaded, the response will be returned, and the response is again we need to refresh what has changed in the view model. So what's changed is the quotes changed, and also the refresh flag changed. So we will transfer this back to the client side. So what we are saving by using services and static commands is the only data that we really need to be refreshed or to be set on the client side are transferred. This here, DotVVM doesn't know whether or not you need something else changed in the view model, so it has no option, but when the request starts, it needs to transfer whole view model from client side to the server, because like DotVVM cannot know what you are going to change in the code behind of your view model. Like you may as well clear the quotes, or you may calculate something on them, or who knows. But when you are using static command, as previously shown over here, you are choosing. It's your choice what should be transferred it's your choice what you will need. In the code, we can have a look. When we set the quotes, it's our choice. We said like we will need the quotes, please update them. And nothing needs to be transferred because by calling the service, we decide what goes into arguments of services we call. So we decide what data will and will not get transferred. That has been little meme example to demonstrate differences in data throughput using old style .vvm and using services and static commands. And to really make this point, I did a variation of this page. Again, you have the quotes. We can have a look at the view model. This is the big data example. And you can see there is some suspicious looking grid view. And the grid view we are going to use in just a while. This is the section, it's the same we have had looked on before. So quotes are transferred using static command when we are adding to the collection of quotes. But to make this more interesting for us this time is like over here, notice we are using IncludeInPage here. Notice we are using static command to load the data here. And over here, again in the sample, only thing that's new here is this quote from David Bowie. I never thought I would need so many people. And what do you think when I click this? Yeah, it loads, and it loaded over 5,000 records of randomly generated data of some fictitious company. So this has been quite a load on the web page. We can go to inspect here and run this piece of JavaScript. Only thing it does is goes document, get element by tag name, and we put placeholder star here to select all the elements on the page, and we ask for length, and we see the length of the DOM is currently 49,710 nodes in the DOM. So this is quite a load. This is what you may encounter if you have like some pop-up window. I have seen this many times in production applications, like customer would say something like, "Yeah, I need to load this grid, but please can you make like a detail that contains some more information about the detail of the row?" You go like, "Okay, fair enough. Let's do it as a modal window, or let's do it as a hidden part that will extend out and show the data of the client." And this represents like the hidden part. And then your customer will say, "Yes, but for each customer, I would like to have a context. So for each row, could you also load, when I open the detail, could you please also load like some additional information, like for example, all orders that have been ever put in our system, so I can filter in them?" And you go like, "Oh, so for each of these 100 elements, I now need to load like thousands and thousands of new lines." And so you may end up in really large DOM, and where .vvm has been your great friend until now, keeping track of all the data from the server and back, now it has become a burden, because now when you use classic command, .vvm will try to serialize and send all this data back to the server, so it can be evaluated, and then they will also then all those data that changed will be sent back. But you have still got the step when .vvm is serializing like thousands and thousands of records to be able to send them to view model to server side. This is what static command really helps you with, because as you can see here, when I load the additional elements, I just do load dialog async, and I don't reload the quotes. I don't do anything else. I just fill the dialog window that has been previously null, and notice the IncludeInPage that makes sure that as soon as I close the window, as soon as I set the data to null, the DOM elements will all be cleaned up for me. And another really useful thing is the same goes for the quotes. So, for example, now when I go to network and I clean it, so I add another quote like mark my words. I edit, as you would expect probably by now, it only sends the mark my words quote, nothing else. The data are happily living here. They don't need to be sent at all. And you can see here it's been updated. It's been updated like instantly. Like if I put test here and I put test, it updates instantly, even though I have like thousands upon thousands of items loaded here. And the best part, when I close this model, I set the data to null in my view model. So what happens is, let me check again the number of elements per this page, and it's like 99. It's nothing. They have all been cleaned up for me. One piece of demo I would like to try now is like what happens if I change this from static command to ordinary command. So I will make this command transfer all this data to the server and back, and I can guarantee it will not be very pretty. So we should reload the page first. I forgot. So now it's reloaded, probably with the command in place. The data has been loaded, and let's try now with classical command how long it will take. And it's like, it took a second. Wasn't as bad as I thought it might be, but it sure took a second there. The craziest part is like you are sending these 5011 items back to the server, so the classical command can evaluate. But with static command, nothing like this happens. And this is really the point I would like to drive home here. Like, kind of, you have to change how you look at designing .vvm applications, because first, in .vvm 0.0, it was we design the view model and we do everything in the view model. Everything that happens on the page, we will make a method for it. We will evaluate it on the server side. We will do the operation in the view model. We will use it was possible only to use static command. It was only possible to use normal commands, and so this was the only way of writing pages in .vvm. And it's not very traffic effective. Like on the smaller pages, it's okay, nothing bad happens. But as soon as you have like production applications with thousands and thousands of lines of data, and you have like complicated wizards and so on, it becomes much more complicated. And as I demonstrated you on this demo, I managed to make this application with static command really swift. Edits in the quotes part very instant because I was using static command, because I wasn't sending data I did not need to the server and back. So I would like to end with last slide of my presentation where I summarize everything. Like if what I would like you to take from this lecture: structure your web page modular, like in modules. Use your view models so they can be easily replaced and easily updated. Like don't make messy view models where everything on the page is mixed together. If there are two separate use cases or two separate user stories on the page, use view models to structure the page according your needs, according to the data, and make it easy for yourself to update the data when you need to. Use service calls. They are cool. They can take dependencies. They can be injected as instances. They can do business logic, no problem for you. And if you are updating large data, use this. Especially, for example, awesome use cases like you have combo box, you just need to update the combo box, but you have really large grid. Don't send the whole grid back to the client so you can update one item in the combo box. Update the combo box using service and using static commands to make the data load on your application easier. Use I would advise against using visible. Use IncludeInPage, that because it erases the elements from the DOM, and if you are not showing it, you do not need them anyway. Like there might be special use cases when you want to keep some data when user comes later and, for example, unrolls some kind of roll-up or whatever. But in most use cases, users will not even notice. Just remove the unnecessary data from, or unnecessary model dialogues, grids from your DOM, and make it that much smaller. Make use of import, to make aliases, so you can call static types easily, and also once again, static command is your friend. To imagine how you could use static command on your page and only use classical commands and only use the old workflow of going back to view model, changing stuff in view model using old school command when is really necessary. And there are use cases when this is necessary, but making this consideration of where can I use static command, what can I load on demand, what can I postpone, where can I save some data, when can I save some user time. This will make your applications a lot faster. So this has been all from me. And if you have any questions, I will be really happy to answer them. See you.